Nazario Moreno was a stressed-out trafficker. It was the summer of 2004, and Nazario was a fugitive. Months earlier, a Texas grand jury had indicted his organization in an ongoing smuggling operation. While on the run, he continued to distribute large amounts of product for his boss, Carlos Rosales Mendoza, a Michoacan trafficker who had a long history working in the industry. While hiding out in a McAllen safe house, Nazario found time to read a book called Wild at Heart. Way before people like Andrew Tate went viral for promoting a more traditional, aggressive man, there was Wild at Heart. The lessons he took from the book would help him create a new organization that would rise to control an entire state and unleash a wave of violence on the entire region of Tierra Caliente. Nazario Moreno was known as El Más Loco, the craziest one. He, along with other traffickers, founded La Familia Michoacana, the Michoacan family, an organization devoted to sending large amounts of merchandise north, especially their number one product, crystal meth. Nazario immigrated to the U.S. at the age of 16 in search of a better life. He settled in California and got to work. After getting fired from several jobs, he realized a regular 9-to-5 just wasn't for him, so he began to sell weed. It was during this time period he began to develop a serious drinking problem. He was also known as a shooter. Rival drug dealers would soon find out that Nazario didn't hesitate to blast. By the late 1990s, he was running a distribution cell and was now based in Texas. Back in that McAllen safe house, Nazario was deeply focused on a book called Wild at Heart, written by John Eldridge. The book advocated a purpose-driven life for men. It supported the idea of a traditional man from a Christian point of view. The book would give Moreno a lot to think about during those dark days on the run. Back home, La Familia was not yet an official organization. It was a coalition of traffickers. By the early 2000s, Nazario's boss, Carlos Rosales, had broken away from the Millennial Cartel and created his own organization with the help of Los Zetas. Rosales and his troops cleared out Millennial Cartel operators in large areas of the state. Not long after, Rosales and his fellow Michoacanos began to have second thoughts about the Zeta gunmen who would ride around their newly captured territory and harass civilians, especially if it involved an attractive female. By 2004, Rosales was behind bars. The military caught the boss after a massive shootout involving a large number of gunmen trying to rescue Rosales. Nazario arrived in Michoacan and eventually took command of the organization, which at the time was known as La Empresa. Tension between Los Zetas and the native Michoacanos began to cause problems between the two groups. By 2005, Nazario, along with the other bosses, agreed to push out Los Zetas. They would go on to fight a brutal war against their former masters in 2006. After winning the war against Los Zetas, La Familia went to work incorporating as much of public life into its sphere of influence. They began to run their own candidates for government office. They taxed everyone from large corporations to local rackets. Both legitimate and illegal businesses paid extortion fees to the cartel, which was now going by the name La Familia Michoacana. The group would direct a public relations campaign to cast itself as some sort of benevolent crime group meant to keep the state safe. Wild at Heart was central to Nazario's plans on spreading the idea of men taking action and living a life of purpose. The book resonated with Nazario because it was during his spiritual transformation that he first got his hands on the book. At the time, he was already getting his addictions under control. The book motivated him to make the change in the right direction. And by right direction, I mean he cleaned up in order to advance his criminal career. La Familia claimed to be an organization devoted to keeping other criminal groups away from Michoacan, while at the same time promoting morality in daily life. It was a weird message coming from a group of traffickers that broke the law daily. Wild at Heart was released in 2001 and would go on to be a New York Times bestseller, written by Christian writer, counselor, and president of Ransomed Heart Ministries, John Eldridge. The book is littered with Bible quotes throughout, including this ominous one from Matthew 11:12. The kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and violent men take it by force. The book influenced Nazario because to someone like him, the ideas of courage, aggression, and the need to conquer were qualities he utilized to not only survive the industry, but also rise to the top spot. In his eyes, he turned his life around. He stopped drinking excessively and stopped getting high all the time. He became more religious, while at the same time running a multi-million-dollar operation. He didn't see the hypocrisy of following the word of God while committing immoral acts of violence in the name of business. He paid teachers to provide free copies of the book to their students throughout the state. He even encouraged the entire organization to read the book themselves. themselves. Nazario used Wild at Heart as one more tool to secure dominance in their newly acquired territory. He would be inspired to write, print, and distribute his own book called Mis Pensamientos, My Thoughts. The book was filled with his personal views on various subjects and often featured advice quotes from the leader throughout the book. Wild at Heart received good reviews and has been viewed by some as being less a Christian book and more of a self-help book for any man looking to achieve greatness. La Familia would later be pushed out by a new organization known as the Knights Templar. The new group would rely even more on religion to somehow justify its actions, guided by a book that, unbeknownst to the author, would end up influencing a ruthless cartel boss looking for answers during a difficult time in his life.